Yeah, you can go ahead.
Right, thanks. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the people who've joined in here for this meeting today. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you. As you're all aware that our Rotary Fellowship of Wildlifers for Conservation is a group of any interested individuals who share a common interest, willing to work towards building a future in which people and nature thrive. Particularly, we are happy to share that we now have a new chapter, that is the Rotary Fellowship for Wildlife Conservation, Trinidad and Tobago. We extend our greetings to the President, Rotarian Maria Mohammed Maharaj, and the members of the new chapter. Now, as you know, we have all assembled here today for this interesting topic, which is conserving biocultural diversity, the Biligiri Rangana Hills, which is popularly known as the BR Hills, and the people of the bamboo. So I extend a warm welcome to our speaker of the day, Samira Agnihotri. I hope I pronounced that right.
It's Samira.
Samira, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Warm welcome to Samira. I request Rotarian Deepa Padmanabhan to please introduce our speaker to us.
Thank
Over
you.
to you, Deepa.
Yeah, thank you, Subodh. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Samira Agnihotri on this special session on World Environment Day. Samira has completed her doctoral degree from the Center for Ecological Sciences at IISc Bangalore in 2015. She did her thesis on the vocal mimicry of the greater racket-tailed dongo, which loves to mimic a diverse number of birds. For the last 18 years, she has worked in the BR Hills, continuing her research on the racket-tailed dongo ecology. And also in collaboration with the Soliga tribal people, she has worked on documenting and preserving their traditional ecological knowledge. She currently works at the NCBS archives, working with Professor G.N. Davy, I don't know if I spelled that correctly, who is the Obaid Siddiqui Chair for this for 2022-23. And she's helping to bring in archival material on the history of ecology and conservation in India. So over to you, Samira, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Deepa. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please, Samira. Please
and thank you for giving this opportunity, and thanks to everybody who's here today. Are you able to see the full screen?
Yes.
So I don't know how to remove this floating window about the whenever that pops up whenever the the waiting room is filled in. If anyone knows how to remove notifications, please let me know. It only shows me how to disable annotations for others, not for myself. So yeah, I apologize for this interruption, but it's not in my control. All right, we'll begin. Once again, thank you so much to everybody who's here and to the Rotary Club and the section on wildlife conservation for this opportunity. I hope you can hear me clearly because I can't see you all when I'm sharing screen.
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. So today I'm going to talk to you about a relatively new concept of biocultural diversity. I'm sure all of you have heard about biodiversity conservation, but what is biocultural diversity and why do we need to know about it and think about it is something that I hope to leave you with by the end of today's session. So I hope I can make this interactive as much as possible. When you close your eyes and picture a forest, what do you see? Just throw some words at me. Is that okay if I make it interactive?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, just for a few minutes. If you can unmute yourself, when you think of a forest, what do you think of? What are the words that come to your mind?
Canopies. Trees, yeah.
Trees, canopies.
Wilderness.
Animals.
Wilderness, animals.
Birds.
birds. That's great. Anything else?
A lot of sounds.
In the chat, somebody has written streams,
Streams, sounds.
color, music. People, Vidya says people.
Sorry?
Trees, animals, birds, color, music.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
Somebody
great.
said people, somebody says it's a kind of therapy for me.
That's
One person
great.
says undisturbed area and peace.
Ah, great. Thank you so much. That was just a quick thought exercise to set the stage for what I'm going to talk about. Most of us will say this, right? Trees, canopy, green, animals, birds, and so on. What about when I ask you to picture an indigenous person or an Adivasi, as we say in India, or a tribal person? What comes to your mind? Again, some words.
Costume,
Costume. That's great.
hunting,
Sorry.
hunting.
Hunting.
Many-
Interesting.
Indigenous people around the world live by hunting and gathering and such things.
Yes. Thank you very much. Any others?
Culture.
Culture. Well, the title of my talk kind of gives that away. Yes. Anything else?
Mostly on foot.
Medicine.
Traditional knowledge.
Traditional knowledge, medicine. This is great. I wish we could have done this in person, but yeah, online also lets us talk to people from a wider area. Great. Yeah. So
Eco-friendly practices with your
eco-friendly practices in the chat. Great, great. But typically, when we think of a forest, the first thing that comes to our mind is not people or human beings or forest dwelling communities, right? Some of you, of course, mentioned those, but the first things that come to our mind are, green canopy animals. And when we think of Adivasis or indigenous communities, we think of traditional knowledge, we think of hunting or ways of living, and we think of costume. So it is this perspective of viewing nature as separate from people has come to us from Western origins and came to us during the colonial rule, right? But now we are moving towards thinking back to what India anyway knew well, which is that we need to think about the people and nature together, right? And not keep on increasing that disconnect that we have developed in recent times. And that's what biocultural diversity talks about. It was defined by Louisa Murphy, who is co-founder and director of Terra Lingua, as the diversity of life in all its manifestations, biological, cultural, and linguistic. And these are all correlated and have co-evolved over millennia with each other, right? And to bring together what we now see as complex socio-ecological systems that have adapted together and are highly resilient. Many of the areas of the world that are inhabited by smaller, isolated communities are also home to large numbers of endemic plants and animal species that we want to conserve. As these people are often considered to be stewards of their environments, the loss of their language diversity means a disappearance of their traditional knowledge, which is an important factor in the conservation of biodiversity. So this is to set the stage of why talk about biocultural diversity instead of biodiversity. And if we look at this map of the world, the areas in orange are the ones where there is a high diversity of animals, and there's also a high diversity of languages. So this clearly shows us that this biodiversity that we have been focused on all these years has co-evolved with these communities that speak these languages, which are also endangered, just like the biodiversity that we want to conserve. So why not look at them together? And what can we learn from that, right? And now it's quite a well-accepted concept. Even the Convention on Biological Diversity brought out a booklet on the Forest Peoples Program, which focused on the knowledge of indigenous communities and how to implement it for biodiversity conservation, right? To bring you back to the Biligiri Rangan Hills in southern Karnataka, in India, where I've worked for close to 2 decades. These hills, as you can see here, are also home to an indigenous community who call themselves the Solega, which means people of the bamboo. And I'll talk to you about that very soon. Thank you, host, for disabling captions. So these people were traditionally hunter-gatherers, as someone rightly pointed out earlier, and have been living in these landscapes, in these hills for millennia. And only recently, maybe only about, let's say, about less than maybe around 100 years or so, have they really sort of, been integrated or have come out into the mainstream. And here is why traditionally their name is often spelled as Soliga, S-O-L-I-G-A, or Sholaga, which was again a name given by outsiders who visited them and wrote about them. But their creation myth or their origin story talks about how they came from the sheath of the bamboo, which is the Bidiru Sole, and that is why they call themselves the Solega. I'll just quickly play a clip of an elder talking about this, and I have to go back.
That's
just to drive the point home that the Solega are the people of the bamboo. This tree in the background, which we'll see again, is their central deity called Dodisampige or Big Sampige tree. And it's at least 400 to 500 years old, because in the 1800s, a British person who came and wrote about measuring its girth, reported its girth to be 10 feet at that time. So you can imagine how old this tree would be. And like I said, these people, when we look at the forest, we see the green and the, all the biodiversity. But what we miss often are the connections that the people who have lived here for all these years have with these forests. Yeah, and this is a tree again, the big Sampige on the right. You can see a man standing next to it to see the relative size of it. And like this, they have many other sacred sites distributed all over the landscape. And they have their own forest gods and goddesses, and their own language, and their own traditions and festivals, right? You're all supposed to say ho.
Yeah, hi Samira, what's this noise?
Sorry, is there an issue with the sound?
Samira, what's that noise?
No, absolutely no.
Okay. Yeah, so they during their festivals, they also have this walking on coals and other rituals. And I just wanted to introduce you to the community before I go into further detail. I think we can take questions at the end, right?
Yes, at the end.
Okay. And ATRI, which is another NGO from Bangalore, Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and the Environment, has been working there for many years, also with the community, and they made this map of the sacred sites of the Soliga community. And all those dots that you see on this map of the BR Hills are the sacred sites of the Soliga people So let me tell you a little bit about these sacred sites. Not only are these sites where gods and goddesses reside, the forest gods and goddesses, like Devru and Marammas, and these are the female and male gods and goddesses, but they also bury their dead, and the graveyards are called Sagga. Each clan has its own set of designated set of graveyards, and after burial, the person's soul is taken to another resting site in the form of a stone, which is called Kallugudi. So the funerary rituals of the community are not over until the burial and the soul stone placing ceremony are completed, right? That's the kind of deep connection they have to this landscape. So if they were to be removed from here, you can imagine that the souls of their community, of all their people and their ancestors would be roaming, according to them, for sure, would be roaming restlessly along the realms. And they also worship these big, tall, rocky outcrops on the top of hills, which they call as Viru. And these are warrior spirits that have a lot of power. And they also worship waterfalls, which are known as Habbis, right? So when we say sacred sites, it's not just gods and goddesses. There are all different kinds of relationships and different kinds of sacred associations that communities have with the landscapes that they have evolved in. Now, I went there as Deepa said, I went there as a PhD student, as a master's student to study birds. But during that time, I also met a linguist who came there to study their language, the Solikas language, which was endangered. And we formed a natural collaborative team to try to study the ecological knowledge that their language contains, right? And that's Omsi and that's me. And we are trying to find stories on birds that the Soliga have. So I'll introduce you to the biocultural diversity of BR Hills through this case study of our work with the Soliga community, especially on birds, but also other aspects that I'll talk about. So these are some of the questions we wanted to know. How many bird names do they have? What species, according to scientific taxonomy, do they have names for? And we found that it was the large and brightly colored birds that are easily perceived that they had names for. They didn't have names for any winter migrants, perhaps because those birds are not resident there. But they also had names for certain small, plain colored and well camouflaged species, often based on their calls, something that we call onomatopoeia, where you give names to birds or things or anything in the landscape based on the sound it makes. Like splash is the word for something falling in water, right? And all languages have such words. And we also wanted to know what is the meaning of these names that they have given to the birds. So I'll just share a few with you from the many that we found. The first thing that we found was that birds feature very much in the Soliga song cycles that they sing during their festivals. Now, the festival song cycles follow a certain sequence. It starts with the Kagga, which is what you heard, which is inviting the gods. Then we have the Olega, which once the gods are invited, tells the god what all is available for them to stay during the festival. So it lists a wide variety of goodies and other things that the gods must stay back for as long as the festival is there. Then the dancing begins, and during the dance there is a Gorukana song cycle, and from dusk to dawn, women inside the temple of their gods sing something called the Haduke. Now the Haduke contain verses about everything in the forest, anything that you can imagine, but especially birds. And so just to mention a few birds that are featured in these songs of the Soliga, we have swallows, we have wagtails, jungle fowl. In the Haduke, we have quails, bulbuls, doves, koels, peafowl, jungle fowl, plum-headed parakeet, And interestingly, butterflies and bats, all winged creatures, are clubbed under one category according to this community. I'll quickly play a clip of the song about mannaki or mud bird, which are the swallows, because they make their nests from using mud. You through some names for some of the birds in the Solika language. This is the black eagle, and it's called Kan Katle, which means the darkness of the evergreen forest, which shows that it's found primarily in evergreen forests as we know them. And it's such a big bird that when it flies, you know, it's dark, it's black, and it casts a darker shadow. So Kan Katle is black eagle. Then we have the Asian paradise flycatcher, as we know it, called Sattuka Bala or ladle tail. And you would wonder, what is ladle like in this bird's tail? Well, we are used to those, you know, ladles with a concave thing at the end, but in the forest, a ladle is any stick that has a flat end that can be used to stir things. So ladle tail for you. And then we have the Brahmani starling, which is called self-explanatorily Talebasa or combed head, right? It has such a neat combed head. And then we have the emerald dove, which is called Aralakki. Now you would ask, what is emerald dove got to do with Aralakki? Arala is the castor, which is a plant. And the story goes that the emerald doves are the only species that can digest the toxic seeds of the castor plant, and which is why it's called the Aralakki. And then, of course, we have our Malabar whistling thrush, which is called Kan Gorava or Gollara, or the herder of the evergreen forest. And for those of you who are not familiar with what the Malabar whistling thrush sounds like, here is why it's named this way. It has a very human-like quality in its whistling, and who whistles a lot, well, it's cowherds or goat herds, and therefore the herder of the evergreen forest. And here are some interesting stories about birds. This is the Indian cuckoo called Kesakki or Ketan Hakki, and this is what it sounds like. Wherever this bird is found all across the world, there is some story associated with its call because it's so, unique. And according to the Soliga, this bird is saying Keta Sata Maka Keta, which is a story or like a moral about a man named Keta who has died, and therefore his children have gone astray because there's no one to look after them. And here is the clip of an elder telling us this story.
Keta Satta Maka Keto. Keta Satta na Maka Keto. The Keta Satta Maka Keto Ferridana. Dikilla. Keta Satta na Maka Ketan. Keta is the low the Keta Satta Maka
So the
Ketan.
importance of having both parents in the family. And this is a puff-throated babbler. It makes many different kinds of calls. One of its calls sounds like this. And therefore, this bird is also telling a moral. And the story goes that there was a woman walking in the forest with her infant, and they were very thirsty, and they were going everywhere looking for some water, but they didn't find any streams for a long time. And finally, when they did come across some stream, the woman rushed ahead, pushed her son behind, and rushed ahead to drink water from the stream, and the infant died of thirst. and she was cursed, and she, in her grief, she turned into a bird that calls to this day, my child, Nanakuso, Nanakuso. And so many stories about birds also talk about morals for the society that the community lives with, and their social structure, and so on. There's, of course, my favorite bird, which I did my PhD and postdoc on, which is the greater racket-tailed drongo, well known for its mimicry, as Deepa pointed out. And in the Solika language, it's called Dodd Karali. All drongos are Karali, and Dodd Karali is just big drongo, because it's one of the biggest drongo found there. And interestingly, the racket-tailed drongos are called the kolukara, or the rod bearers, or somewhat equivalent to police in society, saying that they look after all the other birds in exchange for the bribe of one feather from each bird. And that's interesting because these racket-tailed drongos, as according to science and according to ecology, are well known to be part of these mixed species flocks or mixed hunting parties of birds, where many birds are seen together in one patch of the forest. And perhaps it is their observations of these associations between birds that and the drongo's aggressive behavior. It's also a fearless bird that will chase away owls and eagles that are 10 times larger than it is. And I think all these observations of the bird's behavior have made the Soliga give it this title. Similarly, a very common bird in South India, the white-cheeked barbet, is called kutraki, which is again based on its call, which I'll play now. Which says kutru, 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 and that's why the name. Most important to Soliga everyday life, however, are the woodpeckers. And that's because they are believed to signal the presence of danger in the forest ahead. So the presence of a dangerous animal for which you must avoid the path that you're on and change your path, or they signal the death of somebody in the community somewhere else in the landscape. And these are the calls of the flameback woodpeckers and the rufous woodpecker as well. And therefore, these birds are called, well, Marakutka is the Kannada name for all woodpeckers, but in Solika, they are called Sauhaki, Sivan Haki, or, the death bird, and so on. Kari Haki, the calling bird, and so on. I'll play the calls of these woodpeckers. Play it once more. And when they hear it, they immediately respond with their own sound, which is like this. It's a whistle followed by a click, and that's the human, non-human communication, where the Soliga are telling the bird that's giving them the warning that we hear your warning, we've acknowledged it, we acknowledge your warning. But this is the danger call, but of the woodpecker and the rufous woodpecker. But the woodpecker also says no danger and go ahead, and this is the call. So here it's saying illa, 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 you can go ahead. And here is a clip of a person talking about exactly these things that I've spoken to you about, but I will play it because I'm only representing the community's knowledge, and I would like their voices to be heard here as well.
Happy. ಅದು ಉಳಿದು ಕಟ್ಟದೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿರೋದು ನಮಗೆ ಹಕ್ಕಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಹೋಗಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದಾಗ ಈ ದಾರಿ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು ಅಂದಾಗ ಹಕ್ಕಿ ಸಿಡಿಬೇಕು, ಸಿಡಿದು ಬಿಡ್ತದೆ. ಏನೊಂದು ಗ್ಯಾರಂಟಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅದೇ, ಏನೊಂದು ಪಿರಾಣಿ ಅದೇ, ಆ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ಈ ಕಡೆ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕು.
So those are the woodpeckers that play very important roles in the everyday lives of the Soliga community. Now, why are we bothering about all this? It's very interesting for sure, but you might be wondering what's the link to conservation and why should we be interested or worry about all these things. Here are a few examples. Hornbills large hornbills like the Great Indian Hornbill and were thought to be absent from the BR Hills for many years. Outsiders had come in to do bird surveys, regularly, and no one saw any hornbills ever. And so there were all the bird lists from BR Hills said there are no hornbills here, and there were papers discussing why that's an anomaly. But in 2017, when we were doing this ethno-ornithology work, Ongsi and I, when we were in a town downhill, and there we saw the Indian gray hornbill, which is a much smaller species found in cities as well. And we were accompanied by our Soliga friends, and they immediately said, oh, that's the Nare. So we said, if the hornbills are not found there, why do they have a name for it? And then we started asking a little bit, and we heard stories of a big Nare that was seen on occasion in the BR Hills. And it so happened that in 2017, we actually saw this bird, and we discussed it with our Soliga friends. And then they said, yes, we know this bird, it used to live here, it eats this, it nests like this. So they had a lot of knowledge about these hornbills, but no one had asked them because they were not part of the bird surveys. At least they might have been leading the bird survey teams, but they were not the ones making the survey. And so that's why this was missed out. I wrote an article about it. If you want to know more on JLR Explore about this very story. But the thing is that unless you talk to the people who live there, who are the stakeholders who are the stewards of these forests, you might miss out on a lot of knowledge. We still don't know why these hornbills come only once every few years to the BR Hills. Maybe when the British made the coffee estates in the upper elevations and chopped all the old growth trees for their coffee, maybe their nest trees were lost, and maybe that's why they are so rare now. But we can only speculate. We don't know more. And similarly, when we talk of climate change, here's an interesting observation. This is a slaty-legged crake, which is a very elusive bird. It's common along forest streams, but it doesn't like to be seen. But it can be heard very often. And the Soliga have a story about it, that when it calls in a certain way, then it will rain a lot. But when it calls differently, from close to the ground and not flying high up, then it will not rain. Here is the call that signals rain. It's called Kokunji by them. And this is very important because the Kokunji now doesn't call as often as it used to because the monsoon rains have shifted so much. And that's the breeding call. It breeds in the monsoon, and it only makes that call in the proper monsoon of June and July. And in several years, where at least in the Western Ghats, in the BR Hills, El Nino and La Nina, all those influences, there were years when the monsoon shifted to August, September, and we did not hear the call of the Kokunji as much as we did earlier. So these are the the kinds of ecological knowledge that they have in their language. And coming back to talking about people and biocultural diversity, we also did some work on place names. How do they name places in the forest? We don't need GPSs when we are moving around with them, because they know the forest like the back of their hand. There are no Google Maps to take you from point A to point B in the forest. But how do they get around? Well, they've named every single patch of forest. They've also named certain trees. So this black tree in the center, for example, is Puli Harid Honne, which literally translates to tiger jump honne tree. Honne is the species. In just the name of the tree, you have 3 pieces of ecological information. 1, that the honne trees are found here. 2, that tigers are found here. And 3, that tigers can climb trees, right? And when we were being shown this tree and we went close to it, there were both fresh and new scratch marks of tigers on this tree. So you can see how that low branch would be a comfortable perch for some, a tiger wanting to ambush its prey. Similarly, there are names for other trees. You already know about Dodsambige, and there are other trees that are important places for bees, where beehives come every year, that are an important cultural and economic significance to the Solega. These two trees on the left, the silhouette, are two twin Terminalia bellerica trees, tari as they are called, by the Solega. And the story is that behind them, when you stand here, behind them is this hill on top of which a Viru lives. Remember the warrior spirit that I talked about. So the Viru, on every new moon and full moon night, comes to tie its swing on these trees and swings. And one had better be careful and not wander close to its path on those nights. When we were doing this naming of forests, or naming of places in the forest work, we also found that due to several changes in their lifestyle and in their ways of living, that I won't get into now, but basically rules and regulations that came in Wildlife Protection Act of India, and ban on fire and so on and other things, and the spread of the invasive weed Lantana camara, many small herbs and plants and trees that were of cultural, ecological, medicinal, and food significance to both people and animals have been driven to local extinction because of all these changes. And now they remain only a memory in these songs or in these place names. So, for example, going from left clockwise, this blue flower is Gandateku, and it comes up after fire. These orange flowers in the center are Kauri, which elephants love, very rare now. These are some wild beans, avare, katti avare. These are minchige, which were really preferred by Solega women as personal adornments, jewelry and hair adornments. This is malali, of which the buds are used to make a very nutritious curry. And I have gone out of clock side. But anyway, coming back to here on the bottom right corner, the drop-like things is Kattaguli, very rare now, remembered only in the place name such as Kattaguli Gadde. Where you go now, you will only see lantana and nothing else. Wild species of ginger, several species also deemed to have medicinal value, come up only after fire. These are Nella Kuruku, and we have Nellaki, which also comes up after fire and is prominently featured in love songs, where men and women who are courting compare each other to different flowers in the forest. So that's what, unless we speak to them, unless we speak to the people, we don't even know what is the biodiversity that has been lost, right? Similarly, from my colleague Ongsi, who is a linguist, his thesis, he saw that, they have so many different names for elephants just based on the shapes of their tusks, right? Or even their behavior. For example, Orane are two elephants of the same size, and when they encountered together, they can be expected to be aggressive. Now, before this is a little bit of text, but don't worry. It's just to highlight that when we say, for example, evergreen forest, and everybody loves rainforest, everybody loves evergreen forests. The Solega call it Kanu Kadu, whereas we field biologists might define it as a forest dominated by trees that don't shed their leaves, as contrasting with deciduous forest where the leaves are shed. But ask a Solega person to describe a Kanu Kadu, and they will say much more. They will say it's always cold and dark. It occurs on the flat tops of hills. It's a continuous stretch of forest with year-round water in the streams. and they might mention the variety of trees that are found only in that Kanu Kadu and the kinds of animals that like to live there. So the Soliga do not characterize this forest type as one dominated by evergreen trees. They would no doubt agree when asked that the trees never lose their leaves, but that's not part of their mental representation of the term Kanu Kadu. And therefore, when we as field biologists go there and gloss it as evergreen forest without explaining anything else from their knowledge system, it is a distortion of their perception of this forest type. And it is also losing out on so much information, as I hope I have illustrated here. So we all want to conserve the tiger. Tiger conservation is, a big focus of, wildlife biologists and a big priority area for conservation, and that's great. But to the Soliga, the tiger is just one part of a much larger interconnected human, non-human, socio-ecological system. And to them, it is sites like these, which are much rarer than the tiger and which also need to be conserved. This is a type of bee. There are 4 types of bees in BR Hills. It's a type of bee collecting pollen from a grass flower. A rare sight now because of the ban on fire and the spread of the invasive weed lantana. And if from the Soliga's perspective, focus on the tiger, but don't forget the honeybees, is what they say. And I'm going to wrap up now with a few slides by saying that in today's world, we need to take joint action to maintain and restore the integrity and vitality of the world's ecosystems, cultures, and languages. That is biocultural diversity. This includes ensuring the continuity and development of the traditional knowledge and the environmental practices of indigenous, tribal, and other local communities. It also requires fostering the continued use and transmission of the languages through which this knowledge is communicated, right? And before ending, I'll just share a few ways in which we are trying to do this now. We are working with younger Soliga who are also in a state of transition, as they have been exposed, to mainstream education, but they want to continue living in the forests, and therefore it's important for them to continue to be stakeholders of this traditional knowledge. But the old ways in which the knowledge was transmitted by walking every day on forest paths with your elders and with your relatives have been lost for various reasons. And we can discuss that later if you want. But we are trying to revive, in collaboration with the community leaders and community youth, we are trying to make sure that this traditional knowledge and the language is maintained and passed on to the future generations by finding innovative ways that appeal to today's youth and plugging in the traditional knowledge over there. And here are a couple of examples. We have facilitated the launch of a YouTube channel in collaboration with this NGO that I work with, Punarchit, that is completely owned by Soliga people and contains videos that have been taken by them. Please subscribe. Not all the videos have subtitles yet, but we will get there. But I'm sure that watching the videos, you can understand the gist of what is going on in each of them. And so we started this YouTube channel because all youth are on their mobiles all the time. And we have WhatsApp channels, and we have this YouTube channel. And we also made a chart. So the YouTube channel was launched in June last year with the leaders and representatives from the entire district. And we also recently released in a chart of Soliga sounds, because the Soliga sounds, they don't have a script. So there's no alphabet as such, but we had to use the Kannada alphabet or the Kannada script to represent the sounds of the Soliga language. Many of them are not found in Kannada, a lot of nasal sounds, and the youth are going to use this chart to go to the schools and villages to talk about them. You know how we have A, B, C, D, A for apple, B for banana charts in schools. The Kannada charts don't have any local context. We'll hope that these charts will, act as keys to traditional knowledge that is enclosed in the language. And this was also launched with the community in March this year. That's our team of youth. And we also made a flip book with it that can be used as a game, with the children to prompt further knowledge and sounds for each of the sounds in the chart. And that's it. I'm sure I've taken more time than was due to me. There are many, many people whom I have to thank for all these years of support, and of course the entire Soliga community, especially their elders, for putting their faith in us to help them do this. And of course, Ongsi, my long-term collaborator and linguist, and all the other Soliga elders who have helped us, and youth who are working with us. Thank you to the Rotary people for inviting me today as well. Thank you so much, Sanjay and others. I can stop sharing my screen now if that's okay with everybody.
Yes, thank you. It's been a fantastic presentation.
Thank you so much.
Samira, thank you. And we learned so much, about the Soliga tribes, their practice. So I'll open the session for question and answer, if any. Please, I request you to raise your hand so that I can unmute and give an opportunity. Please restrict to one question so that everybody get a chance. Yeah, go ahead, Subodh.
Thanks, Krishna. Awesome, Samira.
Thank you so much.
Just wanted to check with you about whether you had any, have you also interacted with the Hakipiki tribes? And I also learned that the forest department is trying to do something about making furniture and other household items with lantana. So do you have any information about that? And
yeah, I haven't worked with the Hakipiki community. They are there. They're not there in Bihar so much, but near Bangalore and other parts of Karnataka. So unfortunately, I don't have any experience working with them. I'm sure it's another treasure of information, wealth of information waiting to be found. As for the lantana furniture, A3 has been working for a long time with communities in forests to make furniture from lantana so that, it can be extracted and also create livelihoods for the people living there. There's also, but the work is going on, but I think in between, the person who was leading the work from A3 passed away, and therefore there was a slump, but it's being revived now. But there's also something called the Real Elephant Collective that you might have heard of. They work in the Nilgiris, but they are expanding to other parts of Karnataka, such as BRLs and MMLs. And they have trained youth, Adivasi youth, to make these elephants, really beautiful life-size elephants from lantana. And these have been, sold all over the world with great benefit to the communities as well. So there are various efforts of trying to use lantana to create livelihoods for people. But if you ask the Soliga, unless you bring their traditional cool fires back, lantana will not be, overtaken.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Samira, over to you, Sridhar. Sridhar CK. Sridhar. All right.
Can you hear me? Good evening, Sanjay.
Yeah. Good evening. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Samira. Awesome.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you so much.
excellent. And the way you put it across, and there's a lot to learn. It's not just the beauty that actually gives us the soothing effect to our eyes, but also there's a lot to learn from each and every bird, their cries, their shouts, their movements, and also the life of Suligas and all other tribes that we know. Excellent. In fact, I was really mesmerized the way you have collected, the detailing that you have done. In fact, I did hear a lot of things, but your detailing was much more, which really gave us a lot of things to learn from you.
Thank you so
Great
much.
effort from you all. Thanks to all your team members. It's a real great effort. I should thank to you and your team members who have collected this. And definitely I will subscribe to your YouTube channel
Thank you
right
so
up.
much. Thank you so much.
Then, then the next thing is you're talking about the lantanas, life-size elephants. I'm from the airport. I head the stakeholder management there.
Yes.
We have it at our new
Yes, I
terminal.
know.
in the
There's
Yeah.
Terminal 2 in Bangalore. Yes.
Yes, we
Thank
have
you
it
so
at our.
much. We are very proud to have it there. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah. Next is, I mean, just for the entire community here, Janapada Loka, they have come out with a new thing called tribal folks, basically the exhibition. I mean, I urge everybody to go and see that. They also have Suligas, Jenukurubas, like this, many tribal, they've created huts and everything. I think we should support this kind of a thing by visiting and making everybody bringing awareness about this and telling everybody to visit this place. Just 100 rupees ticket per head, but still worth going there and seeing. I mean, I request everybody to this. And Sanjay, thanks for such a lovely opportunity. And I also thank Sanjay because every time he not only prompts us through our Rotary WhatsApp, individually also he does that. And great job, Sanjay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sridhar. Thanks for participating and thanks for your suggestion to visit the Janapada Loka. Yeah, go ahead, Kiran Aras.
Okay. Can you hear me, Sanjay?
Yes.
Samira? Good evening and thanks a million thanks for that wonderful presentation, Samira. I had an opportunity to work with Soligas sometime back in 2013 when I had signed in for a volunteer activities there. You know, I that recalls, you know, when you showed that Dodda Sampi Gamera, I had an opportunity to be there on a night-long puja they performed somewhere in
Shivratri. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So it's a place called I think Burde Bungalow. I used to stay there.
Right.
So nice memories. And wonderful, you know, because this is much needed, and the BRT happens to be one of my favorite places. I used to take my families, but it's you know, it's not a place of picnic. Again, you know, these are the wonderful knowledge that, you know, helps us to connect with nature, and your presentation definitely did a lot of things for us because I've taken a note of a lot of things that I need to explore on. And thanks once again for that, Samira. And coming to my question again, Samira, just one question, what are the immediate threats that you see, Samira, because you've been there for a long time and you spend most of your time there. What are the immediate threats that you see there and what is that we as a group can do about it? So that's my question. Yeah.
Immediate threats to biocultural diversity.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, are the mainstream ways of thinking which look down upon the knowledge of indigenous communities and also look down upon their language. When we were talking to the youth, a lot of them dropped out of college because they were discriminated against simply because they sounded different from the Kannada that was being spoken in the colleges there. And linked to everything is really the lantana. I feel that.
That's a very big issue, not just in BRT, it is we see that in Nagaravali also. Yeah. And often, I've been visiting very often that, I see a lot of urbanization now, the traffics inside the BRT, right? I'm aware of a certain biking group. I don't hate biking group because I myself do biking, a lot of biking, but now it has become a kind of, somebody's organizing to start from Ellanduru to reach Keguri other end by racing or, by taking a drive inside the forest. And I don't object to that. They want to enjoy the nature, that's true. But, I saw one of the threat as that, because, it's not just about, elephants or, cats crossing over there. I've seen squirrels being killed, or because of the frequent traffic and all that. So these were something that was bothering me, and yeah, being helpless is something that you definitely don't want to be in that space. So that's what I was checking with you on. What are the threats that you immediately see and how we can go about it.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again, Samira, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Kiran. Over to you, Vidya. Vidya, I'm sure you are doing something similar there. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Sanjay and the entire Rotary Club for bringing in such beautiful, wonderful speakers and sharing experiences amongst all of us. Samira, your presentation was brilliant, and I could really relate to it
Thank you
because
so much.
we work with a similar community known as the Pardis in Central India.
Yeah.
And pretty much similar features where they used to be hunters, erstwhile hunters living in the forest, nomadic tribes. But the knowledge, today, of course, they're no longer in the forest. They have settled outside. The challenge that we still face, and I've been working with them for a decade plus now, but I don't know, I just wanted to check with you if you had any, success stories. We also struggle to transfer the knowledge that the tribes or the elders in the community have to the younger generation, especially because of the way our education is designed and so-called mainstream education that we're talking about. How have you, is there a methodology that you've adopted like you explained in your slide? And is that a successful thing, or is it still in the experimental phase? What kind of success have you achieved? If you can just throw a little bit of light, it'll be helpful for us.
Thanks, Vidya, and nice to hear from you. So yeah, the ADI program, which is transfer, intergenerational knowledge transfer in the Solika community, is a relatively new program. It's barely been 2 years. So it's hard to say if we've succeeded or not, but there are small wins. Unfortunately, there wasn't time to talk about that, but there are small incidents or small occasions that give us hope that yes, there is that we have been successful. But our main methodology is to be very, very patient and very, very collaborative. So first year was spent in just having meetings on an equal basis with elders and with youth on what is it that they want, why do they want their knowledge to carry on to the next generation, and with the youth, why do they want to take it forward if they do at all. In some places they don't, and then no matter how much an external person forcing it upon the community won't work. So I don't know if that's been a useful answer, but I can only say that it requires huge amounts of patience, and there are several challenges, but one has to keep in mind the history of oppression, marginalization, and injustice that these communities have faced. And it takes a long time to, come out of that because they've internalized it.
Right. I hear you, Samira. Thank you so much. And I'll probably connect with you offline on this as well, but I hear you, and yeah, we are down that path already, but patience, I think, is the key here.
Yeah, all the best to everybody who's trying to do these things. Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you so
much. Thank you, Vidya. I think we had Madhurya who had raised her hand. Madhurya, would you like to ask a question? I saw you raise your hand.
Hi, good evening, Sanjay. Thank you. Samira, amazing session, yeah, thank you so much for this comprehensive presentation about the biodiversity in BR Hills. You've shared so much knowledge and experience and some elusive information about soligas, the indigenous bird species, bees, and other flora and fauna. The Dodda Sampige Mara almost resonated with the idea of the movie Avatar, Yeah, and appreciate the way you've not made the just slides and presentations and pictures. I really appreciate the way you brought in the voices of the Soligas, the senior Soligas, especially the bird sounds and what actually it means. It shows the kind of in-depth knowledge and effort you put in to gain so much of information. And the songs of the soil. See, I'm from Mysore. So BR Hills is like, a getaway place for all we Mysoreans. So especially namge Soligarna nododu Dasranal onde sari. Dasranali so all the Soligas are brought there, and there are a very handful of people who come there, perform their art, perform their songs. Of course, it's overtaken by the loud music and other things. But I would really want to hear more of this. And if you have any programs in future where where you can take us, and I know it's not right. I don't know if it is right for all of us to just barge into their home, their forest. But if we have probably, maybe I don't know how the frequency of visits is allowed or required. It'll be really nice to all of us to go there and meet. And I'd appreciate if you can do such a thing, conduct programs where we all can go there. And thank you for this beautiful evening and so much of knowledge. And it was truly enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhurya.
You can share my
Ashwin-
email ID with people who want. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. I will share it with them. Definitely, I'll share it with them with your permission. Ashwin has a question to ask. Ashwin, I saw Chandni raise her hand. You want to ask?
Yeah. Hi, Samira. Thank you for the very deep insights. We are a volunteer group which works at Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary. I have a question for you, which I've been pondering over for some time now. How keen are the younger generations of Soligas to continue their traditions, to learn about their ancestral behavior, while trying to meet the expectations and aspirations of the modern world?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning, many of the youth have dropped out of college for various reasons, or dropped out from even before college in PUC and things like that, and they all want to stay back in their forest home. They don't want to leave. So because they want to stay back, they do want to continue to be engaged with their traditional knowledge, and it's an important part of what we call them building their identity, as in who am I, right? All youth go through that kind of stage at some point or the other. And for the Adivasi youth, it's very important. The traditional knowledge is a very important connect, very important groundedness to help build that identity. And there are several of them who want to do that, which is why we started this program in the first place.
Okay, but are they able to meet their aspirations as well, despite not having been educated, or just going back to their traditional knowledge, their financial aspirations, because most of them are exposed to the modern world, like mobile phones and technology, electricity, all these things. So are they still able to meet their aspirations?
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is to help them navigate both worlds, right? No one can live without a mobile phone nowadays, and we cannot tell them, oh, you live without a mobile phone because you are traditional indigenous communities, right? Or you live without electricity, or you live without running water. So the key is to navigate both these worlds, and so their aspirations are, they have aspirations, they want to own mobile phones and they want to own motorcycles and so on, but not more than that. So yeah, I don't know if I have answered your question satisfactorily, but their aspirations are not like, say, urban youth aspirations, for sure.
Thank you, Ashwin.
There are
there are
a lot of questions in the chat box which I haven't opened.
No, I think most of it is there is one question I will ask you next.
Sure,
but before that, I would like to call upon Rotarian Vinod from Rotary District 3132 to please go ahead and ask his question.
हाँ, नमस्कार सबको। हाँ, डॉक्टर साहब हिंदी में समझेंगे क्या आप?
मैं तो समझूंगी।
हाँ, ये जो बर्ड्स वहाँ पे रहते हैं बिलीरंगा हिल्स में, तो ये 12 ही महीने रहते हैं या कुछ सीजनेबल चेंजेस होते रहते हैं?
जो मैंने दिखाए चिड़ियाएं वो सब वहां रहती हैं। कुछ माइग्रेटरी चिड़िया भी हैं जो सर्दी के मौसम में आती हैं, लेकिन वो वापस चले जाते हैं।
अच्छा, देखने के लिए अच्छा टाइम कौन सा रहता है वहाँ पे
अगर आपको
विजिट के लिए?
माइग्रेटरी चिड़ियाएं भी देखनी है तो फिर सर्दी का मौसम अच्छा रहता है। बाकी टाइम बारिश भी बहुत होती है, तो अक्टूबर से अप्रैल मई तक ठीक रहेगा।
ठीक है, थैंक यू।
थैंक यू।
Thank you, Vinodji. You can contact me. I will provide you more information whenever you want to visit.
ओके, अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा, ठीक है ठीक है, ओके ओके, थैंक्स। हाँ, मैं शिरडी के पास नियर शिरडी श्रीरामपुर डिस्ट्रिक्ट 3132।
Oh, very nice, sir. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you for taking part. Yes, Subodh, you want to ask a question? Just before that, there is one question in the chat box. Let me ask that question. This is from Harsha Lakshmi Narayan. Says, how much of birds mimicry could the Soliga identify?
So the
approximately.
racketal, when you say bird mimicry, do you mean if they can imitate birds' calls?
I think that is what the question says. How much of birds mimicry could Soliga identify?
Or are they asking how many birds mimic in other birds? I'm not sure I understood the question.
Yeah, that's all the question says. But you please go ahead with your answer.
Yes. So I've actually, I mean, when it comes to mimicry, as in say, for example, rackettail rongos and the weather and that it mimics other birds, Soliga had no knowledge of the rackettail rongos mimicry as far as we knew. And whether they can mimic the sounds of other birds, I'm sure they can. They have a vast repertoire of being able to reproduce and mimic many sounds from nature, not just birds, but other creatures as well. We haven't really tried to come up with a list and document that.
Okay, all right.
Can I quickly
please.
I saw one question by Prasanna HK, which I wanted to just answer because I saw it when it was posted. Sorry, just a minute. We are planning to make a digital repository because the youth have documented some huge amounts of kinds of traditional knowledge and songs and riddles and whatnot. It's a long story, but funding is always an issue, and so we are planning to have a separate website where where everything is uploaded in a way that anyone can access. So thanks. Sorry, Subodh.
Yeah, Subodh, please go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to quickly get your take on, I'm led to believe that there is some small colony of Soliga and Hakipiki tribes very close to Banerghata National Park, where tribes have been, or there is an attempt to relocate them here. I don't know how successful that is, and what is your take on that?
Relocate them where?
From the forests, they've been brought out and they've been provided a space and a small colony out here.
Yeah, so near Banerghata are the Hakipikis. I think not too many Soligas. And the Hakipikis have an interesting history. They're a wandering nomadic kind of community, and they were traditionally hunters, and that's why Hakipiki, they were expert trappers and things like that. But so when settling any nomadic community, if you ask them or if you ask any anthropologist or any social scientist, is problematic because it brings about drastic changes in their ways of living and in their worldviews and in the way they relate to the world around them, and it has disastrous effects for the community in terms of their health, their mental well-being, and their many other aspects. And in fact, the Soliga were also hunter-gatherers, and they also practiced shifting agriculture earlier, like most indigenous communities all over the world have done. And they were also forcibly settled in what are now the Podus. The word Podu means shifting cultivation. So it's only their traditional way of life is remembered only in their word for settled villages. Yeah.
Gitanjali?
Yeah,
Yeah,
hi,
please.
hi, Samira. Great
Hi.
presentation as always. Just wanted to check, is there any data? I don't know. I just joined a little late. If you have mentioned about it, maybe it's a repetition. Any data about the total number of Sholigas, like approximate figures that you have?
So there are approximately 13,000 living in and around BR Hills, and in the entire Chamarajanagar district, there are approximately 20,000. We don't know the exact numbers because, of course, census doesn't take.
Yeah. And the people who are still in the forest, any database about that? Who are actually still practicing the, still part of the forest?
I don't have an exact number on that, but the 13,000 are, many of those are living in and are on the periphery of the BR Hills. Yeah. I don't know how many of those 13 are within the in the center of the demarcated BR Hills. Yeah.
Okay. No problem. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we are done with the question and answers. It's my turn to thank one and all who are present here for this session. I'm so sorry that I had to, we had to block this thing at some point of time because, what happened, there was a lot of disturbance. I think this is the first time this disturbance has caused this. We have been holding it from last 2 years. We started these sessions from 5th June 2021, but so far we have not had this problem, but this is the first time. But anyway, that as also, that's also telling us that we have to be a little careful when we allow the participants. I really, I take this opportunity to really profusely thank Samira. I'm sure with your busy schedule, research, in between research work, you were able to make time for all of us and come and share. Your video, the Change Makers video, we had extensively shared, and we were talking about, many of us were talking about you in the past, but finally you could come and join, make it. Thank you so much. Of course, Soligas, how they give importance to these lesser known wildlife is something that, we all have to learn from. Just not one species that we have to look at. There's so much to look at in the wilderness. By the way, the picture in my background is from BR Hills. So I'm sure you can make out. Thank you so much for having spared time and joining us. There's a lot to learn from Soligas. One thing that I learned, I can say, is when I came for the bird census in 2021. That's when I heard you for the first time. Okay. So when I came there, when we were walking around, the Soliga tribe was, the one who was leading us. He said, you have to maintain absolute silence. He said one thing, you must take the sound from the forest, but you should not give back your sound. That's so important. I think they follow it very well. And that's important for them because it's an elephant land, and I'm sure that they need to be extremely careful. A lot of things to learn from them. Like Madhurya said, we would like to, explore the possibility of, if not all of us coming us together, at least in batches, a few of us, 2 or 3 of us, 4 of us, 5 of us coming and visiting them and learning more from them. We would like to explore that possibility. Thank you so much. We are really grateful to you for having come here and addressed all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you to everybody for listening so patiently for so long to me going on and on about Soligas and biocultural diversity. But I hope I've made you think a little differently, and I hope that you've been left with the sounds of the forest from the BR Hills, not just the creatures but also the people. So thank you so much.